thought of that. It's just so hot. So no is the answer. I did not.
That's what I would have thought. I always ask, because I never know about you.
I want to again.
I'm sure you do.
Next nice day. The thing is, I have a TV and I use my Drew 7 and stick with it.
Yeah.
I charge it up when I'm here. So the meetings can go long. I'm just like, hey, that's fine with me. Charge it. So it makes me want to drive here for that reason. But I want to scoop too because my nickname. I gotta live up to it.
I think that's perfect for you, by the way.
On a completely unrelated note, my daughter is like, I like how he's cool.
So we could spread out the proclamations and have 0 tonight and 6 last week.
Yeah, no, it was a lot.
It's Feast or famine.
Yeah, no. It'll be 10 next week.
Yeah.
Next council meeting.
Exactly.
It's in spurts, doesn't it?
It does seem to.
So, not really. So this is a new phenomenon, which I'm trying to encourage.
Yeah, sure.
Nashville, it just cools down a little more at night.
Yeah.
Here, it's just like
Yeah, it's sticky. It's
it
sticky.
stays midnight. You're like
It is
sweating still.
sticky.
I haven't gotten used to it.
Yeah.
You're used to it, Louisiana, right?
That blanket of moisture.
Oh, outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been rough.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, and I will now call the order Apex Town Council regular scheduled meeting for Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. We're glad you joined us tonight. Great weekend for Apex. I had several events here, one of which I wanted to attend, but I received an email respectfully requesting me not to attend. So hate I couldn't make that one. We do have other events coming up next weekend, or this coming weekend, so please just stay tuned to that. We'll go ahead and get started with the invocation. First will be up is Pastor John Moran from Reedy Creek Baptist Church. So if you would lead us in a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, hallowed, holy be your name. Almighty Creator, we acknowledge your existence and call upon you for wisdom and hope. As the apostle declared to the philosophers of first century Athens, Greece, for in him we live and breathe and have our being. Most High God, we recognize the intelligent design of this vast universe and complex cosmos and praise you for your mercy. We acknowledge that the Lord is God. It is he that has made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. We desire that your kingdom come soon. Your sovereign will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give wisdom from above tonight to all who have gathered in this place. May each one act as a good steward of the things given to them. Give us this day our daily bread. We thank you humbly for that which we have been blessed and pray for those who are not as fortunate. Help us to assist those who are hungry, both with physical food and with spiritual food that is able to bring real peace of mind and heart. Forgive us our debts, trespasses, and sins as we forgive our debtors. Lord, forgive us for our anger, our pride, our jealousy, our social injustice, our selfishness, our idolatry, our self-sufficiency. Let us seek to fulfill the golden rule, as the Gospel of Matthew states, in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. May we always look for the good in others and demonstrate by our actions our love for God and all humanity. Let us not yield to temptation, but deliver us from evil and the evil one. Give us patience, strength, endurance, and grace as we endeavor to please the rightful and righteous judge of the universe. protect, provide, and preserve human dignity as we honor the living Supreme Being, casting all our care upon Him, for He cares for you. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen and amen. So be it.
Thank you, Pastor Moran. Those who are able to stand, if you would join us, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We'll move right into the consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. And are there any recommended changes? If not, is there a motion?
Motion approved.
All right, motion Mahaffey. Second, Mayor Pro Tem. Discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. All right, we move now to setting of the regular meeting agenda, and I've been made aware of a new business item. Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure. I'd like to add a new business item related to creating policy for filling empty seats on the council.
Okay, any discussion on that? All right, with that recommended changes, is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved?
All right, motion
I
approved.
second it.
Second, Stallings. All right, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a set meeting agenda, so we'll move forward. All right, we'll move now to public forum. It's an opportunity for the community members to speak, suggestions, recommendations, or any concerns for our community. So we'll go ahead and open it up now, and we'll hear tonight first from Elizabeth Stitt. You have 3 minutes. And if you would, when you come up, please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, Elizabeth Stitt, 3113 Friendship Road. So I've been attending some meetings, and I keep hearing comments about how you guys would like to see more community involvement and questioning about how hard everybody works, but yet you don't get as much input. So it got me to be thinking, since I'm going to be coming on a regular basis, that maybe I take that as a call to action on my part to share my experiences. So over however many next weeks I'm here, I'm going to just share up. But I really thought engagement was going to be easy. I bought my property 31 years ago in Apex. I raised my 3 kids here. They went through Apex Elementary, Middle, and Apex High School. And I thought pretty much I understood how the town worked. But I'm in the ETJ, and so there were numerous reasons why I didn't engage. And then when it came time that I needed to, I found it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. There's just no straight answers. There's a lot more complexity. I was sending a ton of emails to the town, and I have to say the town staff have been incredibly patient, and there's been times I've had to respond to them and say I didn't ask the question properly and had to rewrite the question. So I figure what I'll do is I'll start taking some notes and sharing to the council of what we can do to make community engagement easier, because honestly, it's been so hard at times. There's been times where I just wanted to throw in the towel, and I know it's why some of my neighbors don't speak up. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention and tell you I'm going to start trying to bring constructive suggestions so that maybe we can get better engagement going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stitt. All right, next on the list to speak is Ruben, is this Parker or Parlier? Parlier. Parlier, okay. Thought the K was a, the L was a K.
I am Ruben Parlier. I live at 1634 Cone Avenue in Apex. I've lived here since 2015. I came in July, and in August of 2015, do you remember what happened in Apex? Became the #1 town to live in. So I attribute that to my coming. Thank you. Not really. Okay. It's with, and I'll give each of you, do you want these now?
Yes, sir.
It is with great sadness and serious concern that I address the mayor and the town council of Apex today. First time being here. This past weekend, the lifestyles of the LGBTQIA were celebrated and their right to sexual practices affirmed. That's what we did in Apex. That notification was sent by the mayor, and the council, I understand, approved the event that happened on Saturday. So I take it that the council, at least by vote, I don't know, I think that's how you operate, approved of the event that took place on this past Saturday. God does not approve of these lifestyles. He does not approve of them, okay? Now, please don't misunderstand what I am saying here, okay? Because I have lived a long time. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in Miami, Florida. I've been to Key West back in the 70s when that lifestyle was beginning. I have been in Chicago area, Philadelphia area. We moved down from Cheshire, Connecticut, which is near Yale. And when we came here, I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so pretty much on the East Coast. God does not approve of these lifestyles and sexual practices and has destroyed individuals. He's destroyed towns. He's destroyed cities, and he's destroyed nations that have practiced such lifestyles. He warned individuals and peoples that to practice these behaviors would bring serious consequences and judgment. We are already beginning to see consequences in our culture of...
Sorry, Mr. Paul, you had 3 minutes. Thank you for your comments, sir.
I'm done. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, that closes out public comment. So we'll move right now into public hearings. We have public hearing number 1 being presented tonight by Amanda Grogan, Budget Manager, Town of Apex. Ms. Grogan.
Good evening. So the first public hearing is for FY23 budget, which you guys have all had some time to spend reviewing. We had some minor changes after our June 7th budget workshop. So currently our operational and small capital budget is 1.78 million. You can see the breakdown there. Project funds, 8.9 million. General fund budget is up to 91 million from 90 with the increase recommended by council for the tax rate. Tax rate is up from the recommendation 1.1 cents to 41 cents total. Projects remain the same. Debt service, personnel, we're looking at funding that additional housing position. So the changes from May 24th, and that budget's posted online, is a tax rate increase of 1.1 for a total of 2 cents. That adds 1 affordable housing position and then a transfer to capital reserves because that restricts those funds for capital projects. The cumulative effect on residents, you can see here in terms of like the rates and fees that we've presented, so none of those are changing. And then the property tax comparison. So we're going from 39 to 41, and then in the middle there, you can see where the original proposed is. Are there any questions?
I'm having trouble seeing it from here, so can you, for residents who might be watching online as well, can you just sort of give a cumulative average of what the impact might be on residents with I know some things are increasing, some things are decreasing based on the work.
Sure. So the change in services and fees for solid waste, water, sewer, electric, stormwater, we're looking at about $3.90. In terms of property tax, it would be between 40 to 100, depending on the value of your home, dollars a year.
Thank you.
Any questions? The next one is actually the CIP, so I'll just hang out here.
Okay. All right, no more questions from anyone? Okay. So we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item We have one person, Ms. Stitt, no stranger. Come on up. You have 3 minutes. Name and address again for the record.
Elizabeth Raisted, 3113 Friendship Road. I misread the budget. I got really excited. There was something that referenced the Pleasant Plains Park on Phase 3. Phase 3A was what I was really interested in. So apparently it's addressing some of the electrical needs. I was hoping that that was Phase 3A being funded, because what's within that particular phase is where we're adding the turn lanes at the intersection of Old US 1 and Friendship Road. So if you look at the budget for the following year, fiscal year 23-24, it is showing the $300,000 for 3A. So if there's any room in the budget to shift around to have $300,000 be pushed towards adding those lanes, it would make a great improvement to the residents in our area due to all the growth that's occurring in our area. So would have sent it to an email, but I misread it, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stitt. All right, last speaker for tonight for this public hearing item. So we'll close public hearing for comment, and it's back to council for discussion. Leading to a possible motion.
Now, Mayor, do we want to, just staff an opinion, do we adopt both at once, or do we going to do one at a time? Does it not matter?
What's your
You can do it however you like, as long as you open and close the public hearings. But if you'd rather go ahead and close that one, go to the next one.
Any preference?
Normally in the consent, they're done together. So.
I think it would be better if we did both public hearings and then we're able to discuss as a package if we wanted to, rather than kind of break it up
We'll
and
do
then
that.
adopt it in a single motion.
All right, Ms. Grogan.
There's not too much on the CIP because the CIP has not changed from what's been presented. So we just went ahead and included a summary of the different capital projects that we are proposing for the adoption with the budget this year.
Sounds good. Any questions?
Can I ask maybe Mr. Purvis about the question about the phasing? I know a lot of projects kind of have phasing depending on capacity to do the work and all, as well as funding certain years and others. I mean, can you speak to a little bit about maybe that Pleasant Park and the phasing reason and or phasing for other projects as well?
Sure. So with the Pleasant Park, and just for some clarity, the Pleasant Park project is not on the CIP because it's already been budgeted and funded. So that's off. The 300,000 I think might be referring to something different. However, the road piece that Ms. Stitt spoke of is part of the project that came through the recommendations through the traffic impact analysis for the project. The road improvements, now there's ones tied specifically to at Pleasant Plains due to the railroad crossing. I mean, those are being prepared for. We're going through all the design work, so those are coming. We're preparing to do those. So there's also some off-site road improvements that are tied to capacity or use at the park that were recommended once completion of the baseball and softball complex were there, because that impacted the number of attendees at the park. So the phasing just kind of ties it to, as the different elements are added to the park, what the expected impact would be based on use and the number of people. So the immediate road impacts at Pleasant Plains, we're moving forward. Those will, as we move with the park, those are coming. The off-site ones will be phased depending on, we intend to do those, but those will be phased depending on the timing of when the park gets completed and how we're moving forward with it.
Okay. And the baseball fields are in the
They're-
potentially next year's CIP?
Potentially, it depends on, how things look for, as we bid out the final portions of the project now, what our revenues may come in, and then what decisions council wants to make. The roads do not have to wait to the park until the fields are done. We can go ahead and do those. So they don't have to wait if that's not council's desire. We'll just look at what those costs are as we move forward.
And can you speak real quickly? I think people, when they voted for the park, they thought it was going to be all one package deal, but I think the reason that's not the case now is
Cost.
because of cost.
It's pure cost. Yeah, it's cost. Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right, other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for comments on this item. Here tonight to speak is Elizabeth Stitt.
Elizabeth Stitt, 3113 Friendship Road, and I should have sat in the front row, so my apologies for that. Didn't know it was going to be a workout. When I sat through the workshop last week, the one thing that I really appreciated was the attention to trying to make sure that how the monies were spent was to deliver the most value. Obviously, the town is really growing and it's difficult to meet the needs. And so, you know, you shared a lot of analysis around the numbers, and thank you for that. It took me a little while to process some of it, but it was helpful. So the one thing I wanted to bring up is the 1 cent that was being added was roughly $1 million, was $1.1 or something. And what I thought was interesting is within the CIP, there's $1 million set aside for the Big Branch Basin Sewer Project, which you guys know I'm concerned about. There's never been a public hearing on that, and so for $1 million to be set aside, it just kind of felt interesting that you would want to add a cent to the overall tax increase when you could save that 1 cent by pushing the Big Basin project back. So I just wanted to share my feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stitt. All right, we'll go ahead and close public hearing for comment, and back to council for more discussion, leading to a possible motion on each item.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, for transparency's sake, I kind of want to reiterate my comments that we had in the discussion we had last Tuesday about the tax rate, the capital spending, and that, and how we got to here. I kind of explained kind of my view as to what's going on. If you don't mind. Sure. So when we initially directed our staff to put together a budget which kept the tax rate as flat as possible, flat as possible, meaning including there was an increase from the bond last year, that's factored in. There's a decrease from the water utility, sorry, not the water utility, the stormwater utility, that's lowering the rate. So those things were, you know, already in the books. Wanted to keep it as flat as possible. And the budget that was presented to us showed approximately 20% increase in our personnel costs, which is by far our largest expense. Our operational costs were roughly flat, and our capital spending was down by 30%, something like that. So in order to keep the tax rate flat, what we had to do is basically transfer a lot of our spending from our capital budget, which is what we use to build stuff around town, to support personnel. Personnel is increasing for a number of reasons. We're doing a study of salary ranges to see what we need to pay people to keep them working here in Apex. We're opening a new fire station. We've got to hire a bunch of firefighters for that. So, the costs are real. And the problem that I see in this is that level of capital investment, I think, doesn't really fit with what the people of Apex are expecting. We always talk about infrastructure, building stuff. That's what that money's for. And the transfer of the money from capital spending to personnel, it's essentially permanent, right? We're not going to lay these people off next year. We're not going to cut their salary next year. So next year it's going to be the same thing. So what do we do long term in order to provide the level of infrastructure construction that people are expecting? So that's the challenge. In different towns, I think everyone's facing the same thing. Every town in the area, they're dealing with it different ways. You can, not pay your people enough. You can not hire people. You could just not build stuff, or you could find a way to make it the lost revenue. What we're kind of doing with this budget is the direction we gave to staff last week was to over a series of 5 or 6 years, 4 years, whatever we can do, to come up with a glide path to get our capital spending up to the historic normal levels, right? And I think back in the napkin calculation says if we did it 4 or 5 cents this year, a tax increase, we could do it all in one shot. I think that's too much. So we settled on doing 1 penny and maybe another penny next year, half penny the year after, something like that, in order to eventually, over time, raise our capital spending so we can make progress on the backlog. There's some projects being done here. There's a bunch more, not on the list. So that's what's going on. That's what we did last Tuesday, and that's why the budget we're discussing today has another penny in it in an attempt to slowly, over time, increase our capital spending back to our historical normal levels. I'll say that 20%, what I found striking about that is if that were funded entirely based with a tax increase, not that it is, but the tax rate equivalent of that increase in personnel costs would be 8 cents on the tax rate. Now, we would never raise taxes 8 cents in 1 year. And also, there's growth in Apex that's bringing extra revenue to knock that down. But it's the costs this year are real, and it's really tough, and I think the approach we're taking is the right one. So, that's my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
I'll make a quick comment too. So, one of the things that I noticed in coming onto council, and being elected was that our staffing numbers, were being arbitrarily kept low. So one of the things that we've been talking about is making sure that our staff is not worked to death, and that we have appropriate staffing numbers all across the board. You know, and those staffing numbers probably worked really well for a very small town, but as we grow and as we continue to expand, they don't work for our current size, and they haven't worked for a while. So we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing there, and so we have been undergoing an organizational assessment to address that, not only salaries, but also, you know, what positions are appropriate for a town our size. So that's why our staffing numbers have changed so much. And the positions that we have approved and are going to be looking at approving are in relation to that organizational assessment and what's appropriate for our town.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could just speak on that matter as well. We are still understaffed.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that's reflected within this budget is, and I know that the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem had a real spearhead on this, is making sure that we are properly appreciating the staff that we have. We know that we're running them into the ground. We know that there's just not enough. We know we need more. I thank the mayor for his leadership on making sure that those who are working with us and those who have worked with us are continuing to get the support that they need in order to ensure that we can maintain the highest quality workforce here. But these are tough decisions. We did not hire enough, and we recognize that. But there's got to be a little bit of give and take. If we needed to hire more, that may have reflected into an additional tax hike, but there's also, as our conversations over the last month and a half reflect, we also recognize that people in Apex are in a very, very tough position now and may be in that position for a while. So this is not an easy balance. You know, this is, and I give staff a lot of credit for this, did an amazing job with putting together numbers in a way that's going to be able to help us move forward in an appropriate way, and basically drive 500 miles on 3 wheels still. But it's something that we're going to have to take a look at in the future as to how we're properly staffing the town to make sure that we can take care of the citizens in the appropriate way.
Thank you, Councilman. I just want to add that staff is obviously important to me. Mayor Pro Tem and I, we sit on the Personnel Committee, and which is why you have most of these positions in front of you. We really advocated for that. But I just have a question for staff, and you may have the numbers. Where does our vacancy sit as far as personnel? Like, how many openings do we have right now?
The numbers, I don't have, Amanda, do you know an exact? It's around 50, yeah, that's what I'm saying, about 50 vacancies. And that does not include the new positions that are proposed in the budget.
So that is putting stress on our staff as well to try to make up that gap. So really important to me. My only concern here is just the education part to our community. We did make a change last week, and I don't think we did our best as far as communicating that and what this glide path could potentially be. I think that's important before we move and transition into a tax rate increase for people to be able to digest that. That's my only thing. I know we have to make tough decisions, but I'm all about communication, so we need to do that more effectively. That's my only recommendation. Anybody else?
Maybe I'll just want to speak to the fact that our budget has been award-winning the past few years, and I think this one is equally as good as some of the recent ones. And these investments in capital and staff are really future-looking. And like, for example, the staff one that we're struggling with right now because of the big increase, I think that is going to build capacity now and in the future to do more things better in Apex, and to get more grants, to have the services be faster and better. And so even though I like building stuff, and I think that's, so our council's legacy sometimes is what we build, I'm really excited about the investments we're making in our staff, and excited the next few years when those get better and better. I think that the residents will see some differences and some improvements in the services the town provides and the capacity we have to do the big things that we want to do in the future. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Just one other comment. I think it's so important to invest in people, and we're trying to invest in our residents, but it's also very important to invest in our staff. We have quality staff, but to keep them here, we have to invest in them, and that's what this budget does. And not only, part of the personnel costs also are health insurance costs. They have increased quite a bit, so that's part of the cost as well. So we worked really hard. I know we don't always please everybody, but we worked really hard, and I think this is a good budget. And I agree with the mayor. We will continue to work on communication because that's very important.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
Yeah, I want to add one clarification. Mayor Pro Tem spoke about the organizational assessment we're doing, the additional positions. That is happening. I just want to clarify, a lot of the new positions in here, and the reason the personnel costs are up 20%, a plurality of that is we built a new fire station last year. And this year we got to hire all the people to go in there. And that's just a hit you had to take when you had to hire, how many is it, like 15, 16 people or something? 16. Yeah, so it's, I would say a plurality of the new hires are for the fire station and largely public safety. And I think the number I don't have in front of me, I was looking for it, but I believe our percent of our budget, which being spent on public safety, is now up to 40 cents, which is the highest I've ever seen it. 40 cents on the dollar.
It's close.
38, right?
It's 30, yeah, it's close.
38, okay. So, and that also reflects the fact that as you grow, you need to build new fire stations, new police stations, and then at some point, you got to hire a bunch of people, and that's really expensive. And that's a big reason why we're looking at a 20% increase as opposed to, a 15 or a 10 or something.
And one of the things that we did see, I guess it was 2 years ago, is that because of our dedication to making sure that we have enough fire and police, it also helps with our insurance ratings. And it helps with homeowners' ratings with insurance, so they can actually decrease the cost to the homeowners if we're being good stewards of the money that we have, and making sure that we are covered well with fire and police.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none. Do we want to roll it together? We're going to take one public hearing item and vote on that one. How do you want to do it?
I'm ready to make a motion to do it all.
Do it all? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that your motion?
Mayor, I move we approve fiscal year 2022, 2023 annual operating budget and fee schedule, as well as fiscal year 2022, 2023 through 2025, 2026 capital improvement plan adoption.
All right, motion Mahaffey,
Second.
second Gray. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, we move now to public hearing 3. And that's Shannon Cox, Long Range Planning Manager, Town of Apex. Street address, renaming.
Good evening. This public hearing is regarding a proposed street renaming. This is for Squaw Walden Lane, which is within the Walden Creek neighborhood. This lies between Morris Acres Road, Vision Drive, and West William Street. If the street renaming moves forward, there would be 16 affected addresses. You can see those highlighted on the image here. The town of Apex does have an address policy. That policy states the town shall have the authority to rename streets within its corporate limits as needed for reasons related to public safety or inappropriateness. So tonight, what you're considering is the appropriateness of the term squaw. In November of 2021, the U.S. Secretary of Interior declared squaw to be a derogatory term, and they are proceeding with renaming 660 geographic features across the country. Some residents of the street had advocated for the renaming both prior to and then following the declaration. Following the declaration, town administration directed staff to initiate the renaming using the town-initiated street renaming procedures. We have a different set of procedures for citizen-initiated versus town-initiated. So for town-initiated street renaming, and I want to note here that our GIS team under the leadership of Will Brown follows this process, so I'm presenting Will's work tonight. First, they propose a suitable name and review that name with Wake County. We need to make sure that it won't create any emergency service provider issues, delivery services, that sort of thing. We then notify both property owners and tenants and request their input. They're given a form. They can check whether they support the renaming, whether they're opposed to it, offer alternates, and then provide general comments. We review any alternate names for eligibility if they are offered, and then send out a second notice to both property owners and tenants of the public hearing. And that brings us to step 5, which is where we are tonight. You're hosting this public hearing, and you are considering a possible resolution to rename this street. The resolution is in your packet. It includes a blank for the new name as well as an effective date. If you pass the resolution, staff will send a third notice to property owners and tenants. That will include some guidance for them as far as steps they need to take to change their address and steps the town will take on their behalf. And then the town will replace the street signs on the effective date. In this case, some residents of the street proposed Squall Walden Lane, so just changing the W for 2 L's there, as the alternate. The intent was to keep this as close to the existing name as possible because there is some opposition to the renaming. They also desired to maintain the theme, which comes from Thoreau's Walden in this neighborhood. Most of the streets have names related to that book. We did hear from 12 of the 16 affected addresses in response to the first notice. 4 respondents prefer the change to Squall Walden Lane. 8 respondents preferred no name change, and those comments are in your staff report. In summary, they noted, the difficulty. It is quite a lot of effort to change your address and all of the paperwork required for that. Many people have lived here for 20 or more years and just had no issue with the term, and then some just disagree that that squaw is a derogatory term. 0 respondents suggested alternate names. So tonight you're really, considering whether to rename the street to Squall Walden Lane. Planning staff do support the renaming to Squall Walden Lane. Given the Department of Interior's declaration that squaw is a derogatory term, the comments received from the residents, and the town's vision that Apex is a welcoming community for all. We also suggest, check my notes, August 15th as the effective date for the street renaming, which is 61 days following the public hearing. That is consistent with the town's address policy. There were some emails sent as far as public hearing comments in keeping with our practice. Those have been shared with you. The names are on the slide so that people know that their comments made it to you. And I am happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cox. Any questions? Hearing none. All right.
Excuse me, Mayor, I did have one follow-up. Ms. Cox, could you speak again about the support that the town could give the residents with this? I think that's on one of our, is that the checklist?
Yes, so it is in the staff report. Basically, the town is able to notify a certain number of providers. We do all that we can. They include some of the utility companies, local government agencies, U.S. Postal Service, and then we provide a list of suggested steps that property owners will have to take on their own behalf because it's their accounts.
And a quick follow-up, can you describe how this all went when we renamed the street to Justice Heights Street? Because we did this not too long ago, and so I assume staff worked with the residents there, and hopefully it was a smooth process. And can you describe your involvement in that process previously?
Yes, so as far as once the resolution was passed, we did notify property owners and tenants per our policy. And we did identify a staff person by phone and email that any resident could reach out to if they needed somebody to sit down and give them assistance. She did not receive any requests for assistance. So as far as we know, everybody was able to handle it on their own.
Okay, thanks.
I saw one comment about the election, you know, with absentee voting and mailing and so forth, and it sounds like your suggestion is to do this in August and not wait until November. And then, of course, after that, we have holidays and holiday mail and so forth, but thoughts about the timeline? You still think August is appropriate?
Yes, I did review that with our senior GIS analyst, and we felt that the timing was very sufficient. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that those ballots are forwarded. Since we notify the U.S. Postal Service, we did review that concern and still felt like the 60 days, August, still gives plenty of time before the November election.
Thank you.
So the Postal Service certainly has a lot of experience with streets being renamed. It's not the first time it's happened in Apex this year, for example. Do you remember what the policy is? I seem to remember something about there's like a year that they'll still deliver mail to the old address. I mean, that's the forwarding you're referring to, that both will work. Do you know what the exact process that they have and guarantees they make regarding? Do you know?
Let me see. Yes, so thanks to Will, that's in the staff report. They will forward mail to the new address for up to 1 year.
So I think the election should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is actually the third time we've done this in a couple of years, right? 1064, what's the new street?
It's been done a number of times. This is the second recent town initiated with our new address policy.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open up public hearing for this item for comment. First speaker tonight, and please pardon me, is it Brett Dickerson?
Close.
All right, trying to read your writing here.
Yeah, it's up there. Barrett Dixon, 1614 SQUAW, Walden Lane. I'm here representing my wife, our 4 kids, as well as several other families in our neighborhood, one of which lives on our street. And that's an important thing to note that the names we give to our public spaces, our places, our buildings, our streets, they matter. And they matter to people more than just who live on that street. They represent the values that we all share. And when I think of Apex in particular, I think it's already been mentioned a few times. The things that leap out to me, first and foremost, is kindness. And along with kindness comes mutual respect. And I think in particular to this community is willingness to go the extra mile for your neighbor. And sadly, the name of our street honors a very, very different legacy. It certainly doesn't align with those values. It speaks to certainly legacy of injustice and persecution and oppression. And while maybe a simple act, changing the name of a street, I think it does the big step forward to reconciling that past, to align it with those values that we all cherish so much. And it was a big reason why so many people come and choose to live in this great town. Certainly, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. No one loves going to the DMV and getting their address changed. But neither, of course, did the Tuscarora Indians who lived here. Did they ask to get pushed out of their homes by European colonization? And certainly, no Native American asked for their language to be co-opted, turned into these derogatory terms that have been used to perpetuate these demeaning stereotypes for years and years. Certainly, now that we know that the word is derogatory, in addition to being declared derogatory by the U.S. Department of Interior, they also, in their declaration, said that it should be erased from the national landscape and forever replaced. So I think we know that changing it is the right thing to do. So I hope that town council has also realized that this is how we can live up to our values. So thank you very much for bringing this issue up. We certainly appreciate it. And also thank you very much to planning staff for bringing this issue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Miles Devaney?
So I have 3 minutes, correct? Okay, guys. So my name is Miles Devaney. I live at 1606 Squaw Walden Lane. I've been a resident since 2004. As you can tell, I'm an immigrant to this country, and I'm also a very proud naturalized US citizen. Democracy works when the will of the majority is followed. For those of you elected officials, you're acutely aware of this. Without the majority, you don't sit in the seat. When individuals proposed to change the name from the street's original name, Squaw Walden Lane, there was not a greater than 50% majority and subsequently insufficient support to go forward. Move forward in time, a political appointee, not an elected official, makes a comment concerning the use of squaw, and the individual didn't garner the initial support, move forward to say, now we need to usurp the majority and make a change from an unelected federal official. I don't think that's how democracy works. You only have to look at the elements and the events of the 6th of January to view what happens when people who do not believe in democracy run amok and have tantrums. During my life, I've lived in England, the Netherlands, France and Denmark, and all of these countries were at one point colonial powers and did highly questionable things to the countries they colonised. The United States fought a war of independence from the British so this country and its citizens, not subjects, could be free and true democracy could be established. By erasing historical content, in this case, the word squaw, we run the risk of erasing what came before us and the Disneyfication of this country's history, part of which is Europeans arrived, schemed and stole the land from its original inhabitants, and that's a fact. I'm not denying that. The proposed change is a slippery angle. The next name change could be Raleigh, named after the English privateer Sir Walter Raleigh, who was involved in the suppression of the Irish during the colonisation of the British when they colonised Ireland. I have 4 adults in my household. We have a number of changes and communications have to go out. It's in excess of 30. This covers legal power of attorney for agent parents abroad, pensions, wills, estate plans, you name it. This will incur significant costs, time, postage and legal fees, none of which I'll be reimbursed for. Rather than erasing history, I propose we live with our history and support it. UNC Pembroke has a museum of the American Southeastern Indian. I propose instead of enriching lawyers and FedEx, that we donate the money that we would initially spend to this university, so we can actually support the First Nation of UNC and keep native culture alive and history alive and present. As you said, we have 16 homes in Squaw Walden Lane. If we donated a certain amount, it would be a positive contribution from the outcome of this discussion. That way we recognise where we came from and support the key parts of the tapestry that make us States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Juliet Ware.
Hi, my name is Juliet Ware. I live at 1601 SQUAW Walden Lane. I wanted to say I grew up in California where the Olympics were held at a certain ski resort, and the entire town is able to change its name. And if an entire town can change its name, we can certainly change the name of our street. I know it's an inconvenience. I know the majority of the neighbors are not on board with that, and it is what it is. It's misogynistic, it's derogatory. I don't like it. I think we have an excellent alternative. Although nobody liked Dismal Swamp, I really like Dismal Swamp, which is also in Walnut Roads, but it grows on you. But my husband and I are prior military. We've been all over the world, including Germany, which does not have a great history. And there are not monuments built to the person that committed the atrocities. So I think we just need to get rid of this word off of our street and change it to something better. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Hooper. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Lori White. Okay. All right, that closes public hearing for comment, and it's back to. Yeah, we prefer you to be on the list, but I'm going to. Well, this is. Hold up. This is an item that we want to hear from as many people as possible. So come on up. Just give your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Christy Slater. I live at 1602 Squaw Walden Lane. I've lived there now for 8 years, and I enjoy our street, our community. It's a lovely neighborhood. When I found out, that there was a proposed name change, I went online to see what is all the fuss about. So in what I learned on the internet is that squaw simply means female woman. It didn't have a negative connotation to the Indians themselves. They still actually use it in their vocabulary. And that it was the white man that had made it derogatory in a few places, but it's still not something that I feel has to be erased. It's not derogatory, and I feel that this isn't a very expensive cost to my family to change all the passports and driver's licenses, wills, I have trusts, and there's 4 people in my household that are on my deed, so it affects them as well. And I just don't feel that all of this in today's time is worth the time and energy to do this to everybody when it already costs 30% in my household more to just be living and, on top of medical bills. Do we really need to undergo this expense at this time? I just think it's unnecessary, and I really hope that you go with the majority, which was to not change it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that ends our public hearing comment period, or for comment, excuse me. So it's back to council now for discussion.
Is there any kind of estimation, staff, of what the cost would be to do this?
So I wouldn't be comfortable speaking to certain legal documents, but as far as the DMV, we do have those charges. That's one of the main costs. It is $14 for each license. There's a $3 service charge for an online transaction to change your address. And then if you need registration cards, that is $21.50.
Do we have you may not have this tonight, but with the Justice Heights renaming, just comparing how many people were for or against, do you have that?
I do not. I could try to go by memory, but I don't have it in front of me. If you'd like me to get that, I can bring it back after a little while. And we went through a little bit of a different process, so what the original comments were. There were a lot of alternate suggestions. It wasn't quite a clear for or against. We had a lot of possibilities to consider in that case.
Thanks.
I would like to speak specifically to the Secretary of the Interior's decision to remove this particular word. If that's okay.
Is this a question for her, or is it?
No, not
Okay.
specific.
Okay. No more questions. So we're in discussion now, so go ahead.
Okay. So for the first time in the history of the U.S., the Department of the Interior is actually being headed by someone who is Native American. And they created a task force of 13 representatives from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, Office of Diversity, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights. And these people that were these representatives basically, and this is a quote, "The word itself is a constant reminder of the unjust treatment of the Native people." And specifically, this was a representative of the Washoe tribe and of the Washoe people. "It's a constant reminder of those time periods when it was not good for us. It's a term that was inflicted upon us by somebody else, and we don't agree with it." So considering that we have people that are Native telling us it's a derogatory term, that the Secretary of the Interior and the Department of the Interior declared it a derogatory term, I'm going to take them at their word. So I support the change.
I think it's also important to remember that the Secretary of Interior is the head of, or has within its department, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Before this declaration and this statement was made, there was a meeting and I know that solicitation was sought with the 547 native tribes that ultimately are represented by within the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but ultimately by the Secretary of Interior. You know, we're not seeing small words being made by some, a simple secretary. The Secretary of the Interior is the person who is the custodian of all treaties with those who are natives. So I think it's a pretty big statement when, over the course of the entire history of the United States, the Secretary has stepped forth to say that there was a word that is so derogatory that it should be considered and removed. I can't take that very lightly. So I would support a name change. And I recognize there's we're talking cost, driver's license, new checks, all sorts of things that are gonna come along with that. And I think I don't take that lightly, but I also don't take lightly the idea that, the Secretary of the Interior, on behalf of the United States has said that this term is racist. Not derogatory, racist.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Maybe I'll speak to a little bit of my personal experience. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in one of our rival high schools, Irwin High School. Their female sports teams were the Lady SQUAW. And they made the change to Lady Warriors at that point, in I think probably the late 90s. And I thought that was a good thing. And then I'll admit to being out there in the blazing heat campaigning in 2017 and seeing that road sign in your neighborhood and frankly be embarrassed by it and thinking like, oh, that's old, kind of old Apex, that we would never do that now. And I guess how I see it now is we can fix that wrong at this point. So I'm in favor.
I'll add, this is literally the least we could do, and it's years overdue. So I'll be supporting this.
And I will also support it because language matters very much. And there's a lot of work to do, and I think in undoing some of the injustices that still exist around us, and this is one example of that. So I will support this change as well.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion on that? Well, we need to determine the Squaw Walden is Squaw Walden is what we're.
I'll move for the adoption of the staff recommendation of Squaw Walden.
Dave.
I second it.
All right, we got a motion and a second.
And with the date of
And
August
the
15th.
date as well, of August.
Also again, we are taking care of the cost. Is that right? How does that work?
Those are private.
Is that up for discussion?
What did we do? Did we?
Yeah. Well,
Can we, hold on, let me hear from legal. I'm so sorry. Legal was shaking, she was shaking her head, so.
I'm not aware of a legal basis for us to cover all private costs associated with the name change. I don't believe that we were able to do that in the other instances as well.
So we can't do it legally, is what you're saying?
I'm not aware of a legal basis for us to do that.
Yeah, I
For the
guess
town to cover those private costs. I
Yeah,
understand that there are, notifications that the town will be making, but if you're talking about covering the private cost of driver's licenses or wheel changers, deed changes, and stuff like that, I don't know of a legal basis for the town to absorb those costs.
Yeah, I know, I'm not asking if we're required to do it, I'm asking, can we do it?
I'm not aware of any authority for the town to do that. I am unaware of any statutory authority which would allow the town to pay for those costs.
Right, so if there was a motion made tonight to take care of the cost, would that be inappropriate or illegal to do, is my question.
What I'm saying is I'm not aware of any legal authority for the town to cover those costs. I cannot say that, yes, that would be legal. I know that's kind of a little bit of a negative, but.
Is there any way we can research that tonight? Or can we come back to it and possibly consider it?
well, did we cover the cost for Justice Heights?
Why didn't we?
The same reason,
Same
I'm
reason.
guessing. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and second with the name change,
As in August.
August. Okay, we'll do the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, pass unanimously. All right, move now to unfinished business one.
Good evening. So this is the Sweetwater, excuse me, the Sweetwater PUD Amendment 22 CZ03. You heard this at your April 26th meeting, I believe, and the public hearing was closed. The vote was continued to today. And just to refresh on the proposed changes, the proposal is to reduce the amount of required office in the non-residential mixed-use area, to require that a pet waste station be installed near the hotel if the hotel permits pets, and to remove the requirement to reserve right-of-way for the future interchange at Highway 64 and Richardson Road. I am aware that the applicant is here to offer additional conditions for your consideration on this matter.
Thank you. All right. Applicant. Take your time. It's gotta be, I just have to be done by 6 a.m. tomorrow. Good.
I thought we had stop time at 10.
Mayor, council members, thanks for letting me speak. Obviously, this is a continuation from our April meeting. I'm David Schmidt. I live at 1132 Goliath Lane in Apex. It's actually in Sweetwater. Diane reached out to us last week with a request that we consider adding some additional conditions to make the decision for you all easier. She and Amanda have been champions of this project from the get-go. We've always appreciated their help. And then based on her request, our partnership, who happens to be here, came up with these 3 additional conditions we'll offer. So hopefully this will make it a little easier. Number 1, excluding the gas canopy, we will, I'll just read what's a minimum 100-foot setback for vertical construction from US 64 shall be provided. In other words, no buildings closer than 100 feet to that right of way. Number 2, along US 64 east of Richardson Road, the developer shall provide a 75-foot type A buffer. There's a 50-foot buffer that's required. Diane asked for 100. The compromise we're offering is 75 feet up there for that. And on number 3, along the US 64 west of Richardson Road, the developer shall provide an additional planting area between the 50-foot buffer and the back of curb that is no less than 10 feet in width. This area may be disturbed and shall be replanted to a type A buffer standard. We did the west side that way because we were really locked in with a grocer. The buildings are no closer to the 100 feet, so that really doesn't, hurt in this situation. But we felt this was a fair compromise. I think Diane and Amanda looking at this helps mitigate any potential issue when DOT, if and when they do take the right of way. I would like to offer, and we have a letter that the traffic engineer wrote. He's not able to be here tonight. I'll let Marvin bring it up, but basically it's not on their, 9. I thought it was a 13-year plan. It's not on their 9 or 13-year plan, whichever one that is. And it's on there. It actually shows up at 2050, has a project number but no funding. So we're really looking at this thing potentially being 28 years away before something happens to it. But Marvin can come up and actually read the letter from the traffic engineer. I'm happy to answer any additional questions if you have those of me.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I got it right here. I've got a clean copy. So I wrote on my copy, but I've got a clean copy. Do we need to put that into a record? Okay. All right. So what this is, they had some illnesses running through their office. Ramey Kemp did, and so Ronald Stevenson, who you heard from the last time we were here, is not able to make it tonight. But he did. One of the things that one of the questions you brought up last time was whether or not we knew what the DOT schedule was, and so he talked with Brandon Jones at DOT, and I won't read the entire letter. It's not long, but there's a couple of main points that we need to make. And one of them is there's not currently a project programmed in the NCDOT State Transportation Improvement Program, which is their STIP program, for an interchange at US 64 and Jinx Road, which means it is not identified to begin the planning or design process within the next 9 years. The other thing I want to point out in his letter is he does say that the interchange is identified in the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan as project F15B, which includes upgrading US 64 to a freeway facility. The 2050 MTP identifies future transportation needs, but does not commit the projects for funding. And that's the 2050 MTP. So those are the two things that I wanted to point out in that letter, and I'll give it to Amanda. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the applicant? Nothing else? All right. All right, let's have a discussion. We have the motion in front of us.
Could I have some clarity from staff about the comparison between the existing reservation and the proposed buffer as offered by the applicant? Because some numbers getting thrown out, 50 feet, 75 feet. Well, on the ground, what's the difference going to be between the two?
So this is an exhibit from the currently approved PUD that shows the right-of-way reservation area. This is the 50-foot buffer that's required now by the PUD. And so now there's another exhibit that shows the actual interchange design plan that shows the right-of-way reservation area. If you can see this dotted line here in orange, the red line is the actual future right-of-way. And so the 50-foot buffer is not shown on here.
That's 50 feet from the right-of-way of the future right-of-way.
So you can, from the future right-of-way, so you can see that adding 25 feet on the east side of Richardson Road would be approximately in this location, if you can see my cursor. If this is 50, it's just half that amount more. And then west of Richardson Road, it would be a variable width buffer, variable width additional planting area no less than 10 feet in width between the 50-foot buffer and the back of curb for whatever development would occur. And then they've committed to a minimum 100-foot vertical building setback, excluding any gas canopy that may be constructed.
And that would cause the hotel to go from 4 stories to 7 stories.
The current PUD allows a maximum height of 5 stories and 75 feet. And in talking with the applicant today, they believe that the height may be okay as they have it now and provide the 75-foot buffer. If they determine that they need additional height, they'll come back with another rezoning in the future to request additional building height, rather than postpone the rezoning now and start back at neighborhood meeting through planning board and town council again.
Any other questions?
There's a plan.
Come on up.
That, this has been a pretty feverish process to get this all in what we hope to be the conciliatory fashion that we've presented it. This plan right here shows very clearly, I wish I had copies, we can share it, or you can, but it'll back up exactly what she says. And it helps just to see the meandering buffer, you know, that does work itself from 100 feet to 50 feet with the additional landscape 10 foot that we proffered to them on that too. So we tried to go right down the list. The hotel, when we started looking at this, we said, look, if, you know, most municipalities now, the suburban municipalities, as the buildings, as hotels and tall buildings, they want them up near the road and not near residential or not around there. So it's likely that this hotel that I'm going to work very, very hard to get here will be one that will probably be in the 30 rooms, but where I'm gonna push is for a 7,500 foot or more conference room area for meetings and public gatherings and so forth. And I think this plan has been massaged enough now that it actually works for that hotel solicitation, and it works for the grocer, which you people probably know as Harris Teeter. And we have them even making a few concessions. They've been watching these meetings on the from their screens, and so I think everybody is and part of the reason we don't want to delay any further is it's going to start delaying everything, and we don't want to lose Harris Teeter. And but I had hoped this would be up on the screen, but it just didn't make it in
I
time.
think it was shared with us.
Yeah, it was emailed to us.
We can't consider a site plan as part of a PUD amendment because this site plan is not bonding as part of the rezoning. And if it were submitted as part of the rezoning, then they'd have to build it exactly to the T of what's shown here with no flexibility as we're going through actual site design. So that's why we don't have site plans associated with rezonings.
Okay. If you got any questions?
Thank you. Other discussion?
I guess I just have a question because I'm trying to figure out whether or not this is, so would this be consistent with this appears to be, and I'm asking staff the question, this appears to be consistent with kind of the general purpose of the right-of-way. Our efforts to try to preserve that right-of-way, right?
Well, the additional, the building setback and the additional buffer width do help to ensure that the buildings are away from the area needed to install the future interchange and reduce the potential impacts so we can ensure that that interchange is built. It works toward that.
It works towards that, okay.
It works toward it, but does it exactly allow for it?
I don't think we can speak to that. There's a concept plan, as you've seen, but there's no funded, fully designed project. So I can't speak to that exactly. You know, will it end up with costing more to build the interchange? Possibly, you know, if there are improvements within the area where the road needs to be built. I don't know if there's anything that we wanted to add.
I just want to make it clear that the buffer, the additional buffer, is less than the right-of-way reservation. It is not enough to build the interchange per the concept that we have, which is the concept. It's a very tight concept. While the vertical building is set further back, that does not mean that things could not be put underground, such as fuel tanks, water lines, that sort of thing. So to be clear, it is not consistent with the right-of-way reservation.
And it's still staff's recommendation to not remove the zoning condition, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We spoke with the developer in the event that council was inclined to want to remove the right-of-way reservation, given all the other things you've heard about timing and other issues. If you're inclined to do it, we were trying to get the best setbacks, the best buffers that we could possibly get. If you're not inclined to remove the reservation, then that's fine. That is what the staff recommendation has been all along. But I just wanted to get the best deal for you all if you were actually inclined to agree to the rezoning request. If you're not, then you would just say no, and none of these things would be included.
Thank you.
Just so we're clear, there is no NCDOT plans to build it.
There's nothing funded at this time. It's in a long-range plan, but there's nothing funded. But this is what our transportation plan is based on. Our transportation plan does show an interchange.
stand in 714 Hunter Street. Just a reminder from what we heard a month ago, that indefinite reservations are void under common law and the Constitution, and they need to stop. 35 years from 2015 until 2050, and even then, there's no assurance. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions?
Thank you.
Let me also just sort of, final thing is, our team has tried to figure out how to make this plan in such a way, sorry, where we could accommodate a redo of that interchange in future years, thusly the reason about pulling the buildings back, because the original idea, they were going to allow us to put parking in the reservation anyway. And we tried to go along with that and thought that through and everything. And then everybody I went to, and I did have one hotelier that has been in town on this, and nobody would consider buying land or spending $50 million on a building there, that their parking lot could be pulled out, and that would put them out of business for a year or two anyway, if they could survive that by building a deck. So I don't think that this plan really increases the cost. I mean, increases the cost of the interchange. If there's anything built like that, it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars if it's in the year 2030, 2040. And I do not think that this is an accommodation to be able to continue to give Apex the finest project, and we really believe this is going to be the finest project that's been done here. And it's an accommodation that we believe keeps us out of a court battle with Apex and allows us to be good stewards with you guys and put a product out there that you're going to be real proud of. Okay? That's all.
All right, thank you so much. I would just like to ask my colleagues at this time before we proceed, because I do have a question for legal. Can we have a motion to go into closed session briefly, just so I can consult with the attorney on this?
So moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're moving into closed session. We'll go back into discussion. We left off. We have the motion in front of us. Is there further discussion from council on this?
I just had one question for staff, if you're able to predict into the future with your crystal balls, if you have them over there. If we say yes, and if the hotel goes forward, and then the interchange comes along, what happens then?
In terms of what?
In terms of the hotel, in terms of the interchange, any predictions?
In terms of if there's enough parking for the hotel, if it would have to be taken up, that type of thing. So the road actually shifts to the west with the interchange. And so if I'm looking in a crystal ball, what happens for sure is that the gas canopy and the underground storage tanks associated with the gas station will have to be purchased and removed by DOT. Now, in 2050, are we going to have gas stations? We might not even have gas stations. I don't know. In terms of the hotel, it appears, based on what I've seen, that any parking spaces that may end up being taken up near 64 could be replaced on the west of their parking field because that whole road is shifting to the west. So it appears that if parking standards were to remain the same as they are today, that the parking might have to be moved. So that would be a cost because you would have to move the parking. It wouldn't be a zero, but you would have enough parking. So my prediction is the hotel would be able to stay in business and would remain there. The gas station's gone. And again, don't know if it's going to be gone before then. It's possible. In terms of the grocery store, where the gas station is currently, and that it doesn't look like they would lose parking. Grocery stores are notoriously overparked. They want more parking to make people think that they're empty inside. So again, the parking to me is not that big a deal. That's why I talked to them about all the conditions just to get the buildings further from the 64 right-of-way, because that's really, from a land use perspective, that's the biggest concern. We don't want businesses to have to be bought out. We don't want people to lose their jobs, you know, that type of thing. So that's probably it. That's as far as I can predict.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton, I saw you shaking your head in the affirmative. Do you have anything else to add from a transportation perspective?
I agree with everything she said.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the applicant. So there is a request for a reduction in office space from 80,000 to 55,000. Was there a specific reason for the request and reduction?
Yes, ma'am. The reason for that is, you know, we have in this plan a beautiful 40,000 feet signature office building at the end of the thing there, and it's going to take us some time to get that put together. I mean, the office market is still soft. I mean, it's just soft. And more or less, my wife is the head of an HR firm for a big international company, and they're having a hard time getting 30% of the people back into the office. Yeah, so I think it's a timing thing. But in addition to that, when I sat and calculated, one of our first tenants is a major medical hospital group that you all are familiar with. It's taken 14,000 feet in the first building of storefronts. And it will, going back to our leasing at Grace Park and everywhere, we've got a ton of the tenants that are going in what you would think is retail. They're going to be office tenants. They just want a storefront now. They don't want to be stuck up in a building. Y'all see it. Insurance companies, financial companies, all kinds of hospital-related operations. We've already got, I'm saying to you, 20,000 feet or so committed that'll go into the regular part of it. So in essence, we're going to be pretty daggone close to the 80,000 feet anyway. We just didn't want to be where we had to build another office building, and that office building would have been going where the hotel's going. We thought the hotel was a more needed and wanted and maybe made more sense.
Thank you.
Well,
Other questions, discussion?
I'll just say that I appreciate the applicant's willingness to kind of make some concessions and make those changes. I do appreciate it, and I feel like I can support this with the conditions as proposed.
So that's your motion, sir?
Motion to approve?
All right, we got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I will second it.
All right, second, Killingsworth. Further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Motion passes 3-2. All right, we move now to here, new business. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you. So I'd requested to add a new business item to discuss specifically related to filling a empty council seat or empty seat on this dais. We know that Councilmember Stallings won her primary election for Wake County Commissioner, and hopefully she will be able to move up in the general election. But if so, her seat will be open. And we currently do not have a policy in place to fill that seat. So my purpose in discussion today was to have a little bit of discussion about what we want to include in the policy, and then to possibly direct the town clerk to develop that policy, bringing it back to us potentially in August, so that we have something formalized at that point in time.
Okay.
So one of the discussion points on this was a minimum age to be set. Another one was having them live within the corporate town limits of Apex. Another is to be a registered voter within the town of Apex. And then there was a suggestion about being current on town and county taxes at the time of application submission, and potential type of voting for us on the dais. So, any thoughts?
What was your last one, I'm sorry?
The type of voting.
Type of voting, okay.
I think the only question I had when we talked about it was if a person is a renter, how would that impact that statement about the taxes, and what my colleagues might think about that?
Then by definition, they'd be current, right?
I'm sorry?
Then they'd be current on their taxes if they don't have a property tax to pay.
I would say they could also get a letter from their property owner that could verify or confirm that.
Okay.
You know, they could provide a statement that state that they rent the property.
Okay.
Please.
If it would help, I could describe the way I've seen this done in other bodies, which I think has worked pretty well. It's all the same kind of thing tends to happen. As kind of implied by the mayor pro tem. Typically, the body will open an application period, you know, and then usually the body will discuss what questions are on it. So everyone's answering the same questions. Gather applications, and then we meet to look at the applications and narrow down a list of finalists who would then come in for an interview, public hearing type thing. And then at that hearing, again, we would agree on the questions, and we'd all ask them the same questions. And then you vote. Or you do usually it's not a secret ballot, what do you call it? Like we all write down the name at the same time, and then you gather them and you see, does someone have a majority? You know, because you can vote for anyone you want on your ballot. Could be someone who, as long as they're legal, applicable. And then you reballot till we get a majority, discussing between if need be, it all has to be public. I like the things you put down. I would just add to it, I think that there should be, the applicant should provide some sort of at least bare proof of residency, because there have been multiple instances in Wake County in the past couple of years where people have intended to move to a location but not yet done so before applying. It's happened at least twice. So there would have to be a resident at the time of the application driver's license, utility bill. It doesn't have to be a FBI background check, but some sort of documentation to support it that we could say. That's why they're there. But other than that, the criteria sounds good to me.
So I would just add that, all of these criteria would be vetted through the Wake County Tax Administration, the Wake County Board of Elections. They would verify that information in terms of being a registered voter and also being, current on Wake County property taxes, but also the property location would be something they would verify. So we wouldn't be doing that in-house is what I'm getting at.
I would like the clerk to do a survey just to kind of get a sense as to, what are the jurisdictions neighboring us and within Wake County, how are they tackling this? We're not the first body that's got to deal with this issue. And I feel like if we can bring those, those commonalities to us so that we can make that decision. I like the idea of, kind of having the basics of, be a town resident, be of a certain age. The tax issue, I feel like there's probably a kind of a working way of solving that issue. But I think it's best to kind of get an idea of what others are doing so that we can kind of get a sense as to what's kind of the norm. And then that would give us an opportunity when presented back to us for us to address that in an open fashion so that we can ultimately have a public hearing on that issue. And here, there may be some comments from those who are in the public who want to say, we think it should also include X, it should include Y. I think that would be a very valuable thing for us.
So I don't know exactly what our requirements are to be on the town council, but I think the same for this is what I would think of as a qualifications. I don't think we need to make it more strict than what we have. I think proving the residency is a big one. We don't want any repeats of recent events. I also am intrigued by the idea of ranked choice voting because I think it furthers democracy in general, and I'd love to see examples of that potentially that have happened in municipalities in this way, and obviously that would mean you'd have more than you'd have at least 3 or more finalists for ranked choice to work, but I think it worked pretty well in New York City, I think, and got a definitive answer who the mayor was going to be, and and we've got some emails about that in general for our own elections, which I'm not sure those will work for our elections, but at the very least for this one would be, I think, an interesting possibility. So if there could be some research, I guess, and possible options in that realm, that I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'll make a motion to direct the town clerk to develop a process timeline, application, and review process for the potential town council vacancy and bring back to council for formal adoption in August 2022 or depending on the weight of the agenda at the time.
Well, do we need a specific date though, or not?
Do you feel like we need
I say as long as you say August in your motion, then that's fine. We're only allowing that discretion around, if the first meeting in August is a heavy agenda, you may want to delay it to the last meeting in August where there may be some lighter items. But if you want to designate the first meeting in August, then we will certainly provide it back by then.
I'm not going to be here that second meeting in August, so my preference would be to minimize things in that. I'll be on a work trip. But,
delegate.
What now? Yeah. Maybe I can zoom in. I'm not sure.
Could
but
be we just have to have it in place before.
Right.
Before it's executed. So.
And we can always
Some
say
flexibility
delay
is
it
fine.
if we need to.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So, all right, that's my motion.
All right, got a motion?
Second.
Second, Gray. All right, any further discussion on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, now move to updates.
All right.
Mr. Purvis.
If y'all are okay, I'll just stay right here. First, to start off with, Ms. Crosby sends her best, and she wanted to make sure that I passed along her thanks and how proud she was of town staff and the community for the event on Saturday. It was well attended, and she was there as well. And so, anyway, she just want to make sure we pass that on and tell everyone hello. And again, great job in the Pride event on Saturday. Continuing on, just a reminder that upcoming events, as you mentioned earlier, Mayor, so the Juneteenth Freedom Day Festival will be coming up on this Saturday at the Depot from 11 to 5. So lots of activities going on at that event, and I think there's some merchandise being sold and some other things there. So looking forward to that event this Saturday, and then it'll be followed by Juneteenth. Juneteenth is being on Sunday, so our offices will be closed as it is a holiday. So on the 20th, town offices will be closed in observance of Juneteenth. Parks Plan Open House on June 22nd from 6 to 8 at the Senior Center. This is an opportunity for the public or anyone that's interested to weigh in on the current update to the Parks and Rec Master Plan. Vision Zero Safety Town Event, June 25th at Town Hall campus, right outside here. I think they're using it all over, actually. From 10 to 2, this event will feature different interactive traffic safety activities for all ages, kick off public feedback period for the Vision Zero Draft Action Plan, which many of you have already been a part of as well. So the events just keep coming. And then I do want to bring back up that the Always Stop study that was originally planned to begin on June 7th has been pushed back to July, so there will be a delay in that to ensure more communication, more information, education about what's going on, and the study itself, like what the purpose is and what they're looking at, and how we'll encourage public feedback. So again, lots of stuff going up, and then every weekend, and we'll head into 4th of July. The only other things I want to add, we have 2 long-term retirements coming up this month. Mr. David Harden for Water Resources will be retiring at the end of the month, and Ms. Renee Matai from Parks and Recreation will be retiring at the end of the month. So again, lots of great staff that are on to the next journey in their life. So we appreciate their commitment to Apex and our residents and all they've done for us, but also wish them the best. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Purvis.
What about Chief McGee?
So I think we've already announced that one, but he's leaving. So he's kind of announced, but yes, this will be his last month as well. So he's headed to the coast. So.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes.
All right, that is all on the agenda. 10 minutes to 8, not bad. All right, is there any further business? If not, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.